the story of the collaboration between Annie Scoons and Robert Amos. I was visiting Annie at Glamorgan Farm, which she wrote in her books Home and Home and Away, beautiful stories about the farm. But I always felt that the books lacked terrific illustrations to show you what the farm was like. And I took the idea to her that I'd like to gather some of the stories together and do an illustrated version. She enjoyed that idea too, but when we spoke to our publisher, Touchwood Editions, about that, they said, actually we already have Annie's books on the shelf to sell, we're not going to publish a new one, why don't you do a book on Victoria together? Because Annie had just moved to James Bay. So Annie spent the first year, 18 months of living in Victoria, going to different neighborhoods and asking questions and keeping her eyes open and writing down her findings. During this time, she kept me informed of where she was going and what she was finding, and we shared a lot of ideas of interesting places in the greater Victoria region. Our publisher had quite a bit to do as well, suggesting neighborhoods they wanted to be sure to have included and what the scope of the book should be. So we all worked together for most of 2 years to put together this book, Hometown, Out and About in Victoria's Neighborhoods. Without any further ado, I'm going to introduce the author of Hometown, Annie Scoons.
Am I reading now? Well, I have. Or just now I know. All right. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming to my great launch, and thank you, Bruce, the publisher, and Emily, who works at Touchwood, and Robert, of course, for all the work that he's done. And I'm just going to go right into it. I was looking at the book earlier and reading bits, and you know, out of the this is the fourth book. Out of the fourth book, this one actually is the most readable for me. Actually, I can pick up any page, and I think it's delightful, actually. And I mean the book. This is an example of Robert's delightful work that goes with a little part about Chinatown. So what I was leading up to saying is that actually, I'll read a little snippet from here and there, but I can take requests, which I've never done in any book reading ever, but I can take a request on any neighborhood if you like that's in the book, and I'd be delighted to read it now or after. We might actually do 2 readings, so you don't have to stay until 4 o'clock, honestly. If you just would like to hear this reading and then amble off, that's okay. So we were thinking I might do another reading at 3 for other people or you again. So I'm just going to start. I have to say that one of the first illustrations in the book is of the old barn at Glamorgan Farm, where I moved from. So the first few pages are about the difficulties and culture shock of actually moving. I thought it would be fun. I was all excited. Why did you decide to move? That's a good question, and I can take questions too afterwards. But I did decide to move because I was basically just exhausted. Right? It's a long story. Well, it's a short story. I was exhausted. Okay, so I'm just going to start. I did a little bit of research here and there too, so there's lots of kind of cool facts in here that I found out. When we moved to James Bay, I of course brought all the cats and all the dogs, and almost had to bring the goats to the backyard, but then they found a good home. And Alice Mary was one of the dogs that we brought. She was a wonderful, big, old Labrador. She's been in every other book. Isn't it? It isn't. Oh. Still good. All right. Elizabeth, and I should have to thank Elizabeth too for doing all this at the gallery. And she knows me and knows my mind. Very good, Elizabeth. You always have to upstage me. I love her. She's good. talking about Alice Mary in our new house in James Bay. And I'm just going to read like a column here and a column there, just to give you a few snippets, okay? And I know you're standing, so I'm not going to read for like 20 minutes. It's just a little snippet to give you a taste, okay? Alice Mary loves to be in the basement. So our house in James Bay has a basement. I've never had a basement. The farm had a crawl space which was about this high. Then I would literally, crawl through in the dirt with the rats and all kinds of things. Alice Mary loves to be in the basement. She only has to lumber up one little cement step to the back lawn, where she peacefully dozes under the apple trees beside the big blue ceramic pot, which I loved from the farm. I brought everything. Everything. Every pot, every rubber boot, every hose, everything. Which I lugged from the farm, full to overflowing with yellow and cherry red petunias. On warm summer days, Alice sniffs the fresh sea breeze wafting up our quiet street from nearby Dallas Road. Just before the great move to James Bay took place, I called our dear veterinarian to the farm to put Alice Mary down. She was, after all, 17, and she had been having intestinal troubles, which I will not go into. Suffice to say, it wasn't a pretty sight, and my wool drugs were becoming stained and ruined. The nice veterinarian came to the farm and looked at Alice Mary, who was restless and panting under the grand old honeysuckle bush, and said that she'd be back later to do the deed. And would I like to bury her on the farm or have her cremated? I thought she should rest in peace with all the other dear creatures who were on the farm. Lots of naked-necked chickens, the old pony Napoleon, and his scrawny pal, sad pal Kyle, the ex-racehorse, Buster, the most affectionate pig I ever met, and Norman, a stray cat who crawled into the house one wet, howling night and stayed for years. The vet gave Alice a pill to make her comfortable and left, and I went about my chores. Suddenly I heard a gastric commotion from Alice Mary's rear end on the lawn. On close inspection, I found 2 excreted slimy Brillo pads, probably from the barbecue at the Sandown racetrack. Alice Mary has been fine ever since that day for a great excretion and has made it to James Bay. That's a little part of the begin. It's not all that way. It goes into the neighborhood. I just wanted to show you too that there's lots of little parts of the book, most of them illustrated, in green print, which is a research little bit of information. So this one is on Ogden Point. There's all kinds of really neat little pieces of information that I found that I went around. Ogden Point's page 13. So here's another snippet. So this is still in James Bay. Just up the street from my house is Emily Carr's house, her birthplace, and now a museum. A lovely yellow Victorian house with primroses and little pink tea roses in a circular garden in the front. Gravel pathways wind their way between lilies and fragrant mock orange shrubs and lilacs. I wonder if Emily Carr even had tea. She was so rustic, or at least she became that way. I can picture her sitting on a tree stump in the woods that she loved, surrounded by her beloved gray, salt and wind-weathered leaning totem poles, drinking strong day-old coffee from a rusted and chipped enameled pot. I can't really see her drinking tea in her forest days. Just because she lived at one time in an elegant town in an English society and did lovely watercolors, one of my favorites is of Beacon Hill Park looking up the hill, doesn't really mean she took tea from little china cups, does it? Well, maybe it does, but her fingers became so thick and muscular, I doubt she could even fit her finger through the delicate handle of a teacup. Maybe she had some kind of First Nations tea made from roots or berries. My grandfather, Harold Mortimer Lamb, Mum's father, also lived here in James Bay. He did photography in his spare time and was a friend of Emily's. Mom says he invented a way of taking photographs at night, but in the daytime, she says with a laugh, I remember him taking photos under a blanket. In fact, Grandpa Harold took a photograph of Emily Carr, the one with her arms crossed, wearing a little cap, hard and weathered, staring at the camera. I have the photo, and I also have an ashtray she made with local clay. It looks like a whale's mouth, and it's painted with First Nations symbols in red and dark green, and signed on the bottom, right in the clay, Clee Wick. I suppose she gave it to my grandfather. They were both in the local art world, although Mom says they had a big disagreement. Emily actually hit Harold in the days long before the word abuse was used. That was the end of the relationship. She was hot-tempered and made art, and he was cold and aloof and collected art. Small wonder they parted, but completely understandable that they met and conversed, for a little while at least. They had one thing in common, smoking. They both smoked.